not be talking about going to the moon. They should focus on Mars. And you know what? In 2 weeks, it'll be the opposite.
And I have a quick question.
Sure.
They said that we now have lighter materials than we did back in the 1960s, lighter than tinfoil and paper mache.
Yes, much lighter.
Lighter than curtain rods.
Yeah.
What do they got?
Yeah, it's much thinner than the tinfoil that you could poke your finger through. All right, guys, thank you so much. This is the end of the show on Jeranism RAW. Head over to tfrlive.com and call us. We'll be on the radio over there. Maybe we'll stay till this for sure.
Yeah, it's much lighter. It's much thinner than
Truth Frequency Radio is your #1 source for news and information without the hate, hype, and fear. We're proud to feature cutting-edge programs like The Christopher Everard Show, The Covert Report with Susan Lindauer, Enemy Within Radio with Tom Barnes, Freaky Friday with The Woo Crew, The Gematria Effect with Zachary Hubbard, America's Evil Genius with Travis Cook, Phoenix Rising Radio with Phoenix, Quantum Connections with Lucky, and dozens more. Did you know you can listen from any telephone by dialing 641-793-7117 or call into your favorite show toll free at 833-TFR Live. Uncensored talk and news you won't hear in the mainstream media. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception. More. Did you know you can listen from any telephone by dialing 641-793-7117?
The Russia probe, deadly chopper crash. I'm Ann Cates. A deal has been reached between the Justice Department and a House panel. Correspondent Linda Kenyon.
Representative Jerry Nadler, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, says the agreement allows his committee to obtain key underlying evidence from the Mueller report. Nadler says, in his words, he will hold the criminal contempt process in abeyance for now. He also says all members of the committee will have access to the files, and while he will allow the Justice Department time to demonstrate compliance with the agreement, he's not ruled out moving ahead with criminal contempt in the future.
Former Nixon White House counsel John Dean has testified on Capitol Hill today that special counsel Robert Mueller provided Congress with a roadmap for investigating President Trump, and the probe can be compared to Watergate. Authorities in New York City say there are no indications that a fatal helicopter crash into a Manhattan office tower was an act of terrorism. Correspondent Bryn Gingras reports the pilot was killed.
They didn't talk about the fact that there was, the communication that was going on with LaGuardia. They didn't talk about where this helicopter was supposed to be going, its flight path, or, anything about the registration of the helicopter. Again, we don't know the pilot's name, who it belonged to. So there's still a lot of questions that are out there.
The sand fire near Sacramento, California is now 30% contained. Correspondent Dan Simon says the weather today is not helping firefighters.
We're expected to hit triple-digit temperatures today, so very difficult for these firefighters who, by the way, are battling this blaze in very steep, rugged terrain. We're at the command post, and you really can't access where this fire is burning at the moment. But it's also being fought from the sky, and I know that the helicopters made a big difference in terms of getting that containment number up.
On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average closed up 79 points. The S&P 500 gained 13. The Nasdaq up 81. I'm Ann Cates.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
79 points. The S&P 500 gained 13. The Nasdaq up 81.
On the weekday, don't be surprised, don't be surprised. Walk like us, they even talk like us. Walk like us.
All right, welcome back. You are listening to Jeranism Monday Night Raw. Thank you guys for joining us, David Weiss, myself, Jeran from Jeranism. For the last time, though, we are now going to be ending the Jeranism Raw YouTube feed. So if you're listening over there, and by the way, sorry for that audio break there, but that's part of the reason why, because that B.O.B. song plays as we enter back, and I will get a copyright strike if I keep that on there. So I had to mute out. Hopefully not too much of that showed up there. But anyway, if people don't know why we have to cut it out, because we take calls. And Dave, you remember when we had some calls from people who thought it was great to simply try and say the N-word to get us removed from the channel?
The N-word, you mean...
B.O.B. song plays.
Yes.
We enter
Beep.
and I will get a copyright
that
strike
word.
if I
Hey,
keep that on
before
there.
we get into calls, I just want to point out the propaganda that is just hypnotizing the world. So long before I knew the Earth was flat, I was fascinated with space, and I have Google alerts that I set up probably 15 years ago, maybe even longer, but probably 15 years ago, not longer. And one of them was Planet Orbit. Anytime there's something new about a new discovered planet, I want to know about it. And I would read those every day when they come in. When they didn't come in every day, but when they came in once a week. But I haven't changed that alert. I still get those emails. I get emails every single day. And I'm looking at them from a completely different paradigm, knowing that they're bullshit. But this is the one I just got while we're on break. Why is Jupiter so bright? At its brilliant best this week, the icy asteroid that became a gas giant. Then it just shows me a CGI picture, and it's talking about how Jupiter was an asteroid way farther out in the solar system, and it pulled it, and because it was farther out and small, it was able to pull in other meteors or asteroids or whatever, and then it moved into its fourth position where it's still pulling in where it's still pulling in other asteroids. It literally, and it's all cartoon pictures and cartoon satellites filming it. Jupiter and the Trojans that it pulls in. Next paragraph. From an icy asteroid to a gas giant. It's like a kid's fairy tale book. And this is on Forbes.com.
How does it become gas? Why did it become gas? Why did the gas planets become gas? I thought they're pulling in rocky meteors, but then the gas ate them up.
This is like a 5-page article. Has NASA ever visited the Jovian Trojans?
Oh boy!
And people believe this. You know why? Because it's in Forbes. They wouldn't be wrong. This is vetted.
How does it become
Guy in a white lab.
Up space. We've all been taught space science fiction's job was well complete. 80 years.
You're still live on Jeranism Raw.
Yeah, I know. I never got to finish it off. You interrupted me to tell.
I thought you were done. Sorry.
No, I know I'm still live there. So I was just going to tell everybody, if you want to come over, it's 213-233-3998 if you want to get in line to get on the phones, or you can just scroll down in this video on YouTube, click the first link you see, you'll go over there and listen to us live. So just letting you guys know, we'll not be back next week, like I said, because we'll be with Crow 777 and Jason Lindgren, and that will be next Monday, but it will only be on TFRlive.com, so check us out over there, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining us in the chat. Head over to Ginger Sugar Bush or call us 213-233-3998. Thanks so much. Peace.
Just letting you guys know, we'll not be back next week.
We are so smooth. It's amazing.
I am smooth as silk. All right. So I believe that's finally done. Let me make sure that we're off the line here. Yeah, we are. Oh, and you know what? The video it recommended for me is a Jeranism video. That's cool.
Oh, fantastic. Hey, so I suggest people set up some Google alerts for Planet Orbit or International Space Station or whatever, and then you'll get great material to talk about, make videos about. Highly recommend it, because this is what the rest of the world that's sleeping is eating every day for breakfast.
Our universe
they
is
love
one of immense and
all right, should we go to the phones? Check out who we got. First call, one of the hottest chicks, David, in Flat Earth. You know who it is?
Oases
Karen B?
Michelle Gens. Michelle, how are you?
There are more stars in our universe than there are grains
giving you a
of
hard
sand.
Oh, but that's sweet. I'm also blushing. Oh, thanks.
It's an absurd
I'm good.
number that defies
nothing new.
human comprehension.
I'm gonna ask
Yet,
to just
despite
have
this
2 or 3
abundance of
minutes
cosmic
every time. And hi,
landmarks,
Dave.
there's a
I
certain
realized the
irony
last
that
2
we
or 3
live
times
in a
I've called it, I've never
universe
said hi.
where the
But
outposts of concentrated matter are few and far between.
Who is this?
if
Michelle
each
gets.
star were indeed shrunk down to the size
it's
of
your
a grain
favorite
of
blonde.
sand, then the typical separation between each grain would be
go ahead.
about
You got
6
miles.
Okay.
So that's sort of the distance from here at Columbia to downtown Manhattan in the
and I'll
Greenwich
probably
Village.
tear up a little
Now,
bit
that
because
distance,
this
which
is,
is about 4
I'm
light
very
years coming
grateful
back to physical
for
units,
you and
is
your
so
channel and what
great
it's
that
done for
represents
my
an
life.
immense challenge to
And
our
so I'm
modern
going to start out
spacecraft.
with a quote.
For example, it would take our most
This
remote
is a quote. It says,
spacecraft,
"Gratitude
Voyager
unlocks
2,
the fullness of
another
life. It turns what
80,000
we have
years to
into
traverse
enough
such
and
a
more.
distance.
It turns
And that's
denial into
just our
acceptance,
nearest
chaos
star.
to
Our
order,
nearest
confusion
galaxy
to clarity.
is half
It can turn a
million
meal
times
into
further
a
out than
feast,
this.
a house
When
into a
faced
home,
with such
a
epic
stranger
distances, such
into a friend.
timescales, it seems
And
like the
that's by
universe simply
Melody.
forbids the
Can't
dream
say her last name,
of
but
human
the
astronauts
last
ever
part, a
exploring the
stranger
depths of
into a
space.
friend.
Like a cosmic joke,
I have a
teasing
big
us
thank
with
you
jewels
for
of
you,
exploration,
Jeran, because
which
your
will
channel
always be
has
out of reach.
unlocked.
And it's at times like
turned
these that we
strangers
tend to
into
dream
friends.
of other
And
solutions
one,
based
and
on
I'm not going
exotic
to
physics,
say their
such as
names
warp
specifically,
drives
but
or wormholes.
one of your
But to the
listeners,
best of our knowledge, these
I
are theoretically
became acquainted with
implausible.
and
What
exchanged
about
contact
using
information. I
real,
met him in
proven
your
physics?
chat.
In our
And,
recent videos, we
he
discussed the
lived
halo
locally. He was
drive as a
actually at
possible
the
means for
meetup in
interstellar
May
travel.
that you attended,
But even
and
that
you
system
got to
isn't
meet
fast
him.
enough to get
And
into
he's
other
a
galaxies.
disabled veteran.
Remarkably,
And
there is a trick
he
using proven physics
has some
that
front
might
teeth that are
allow a
missing.
person
And
to
for
travel
those who don't
between
know, I'm a
even
registered dental
distant
assistant. I also
galaxies on a
own
human
a dental lab
lifetime.
out of my house, so I make
But
like retainers
making a
and
deal
mouth
with the
stuff.
devil, it comes at
And
such a
so
steep price
he has some
that
missing
you might
front
not be
teeth,
so
and he
quick to want to sign up.
posted on his
A
Facebook
cost
that
that
he was
emerges
going
as
to
a
see his kids
natural
for the first time
consequence of
today.
Einstein's
Actually,
special
this was like
theory
about a week
of
ago,
relativity.
and that he was,
Today, we're
he
going to be
had
taking a
lost
trip
his
on
partial
board
denture
the
that
constantly
had replaced his
accelerating
teeth
spacecraft.
like a week ago, and that he was so self-conscious and worried about
Let's
seeing
imagine
his
that we
kids
have
for the first time
constructed
in
a
years
ship capable
and
of
having
accelerating
missing
at
teeth.
1
I mean,
G
obviously, you
for
don't,
as long as we like.
whatever the reason
That means
is,
that its
it's enough just
velocity
self-confidence
increases by
being there.
10 meters per
And
second
so he
for
put this
each
out on
and
Facebook,
every
and
second that ticks by.
I jumped
So,
on
for
it because
example,
it's like I
after
make
10
these things
seconds,
like, oh my
it will
God,
be
like, let me
traveling
help
at
you.
100
And
meters
so
per
over the last
second
week,
and
I
have
made
covered a
him a
distance
partial
of
denture,
half a kilometer.
and I was able to give
We're
that
just
to
going
him
to leave
yesterday.
aside
And
the issue of
not
how a
only was this
spaceship
the
could
best
actually
partial I've ever
conduct
made,
such a
it
feat for
fit
the
so
moment and just
perfect,
assume
and
it is true. And that's simply for the purpose
it
of
made
keeping
him
this
smile,
video
which
Did you
focused and
put a
smile
flat Earth
and
map
similarly,
on
we're
the
going
teeth
to
by
assume
any
that our
chance?
spaceship has
No,
perfect
but I'm
shielding
gonna
capable of
get
withstanding
to that.
any kind of
Like
impact
Flatter's grill?
radiation you can imagine.
Yeah.
I know,
One
like
benefit
a
of the
AE
constant
map
acceleration
on the palette of the
would be
acrylic.
that
Just
this would
FE
push
on
the
the two
tooth
front
back
teeth.
towards the rear
That'd
of
be
the
nice.
ship with the same force
Oh my
that
God,
the
that'd be
Earth
And
hilarious.
if there was
pins to the
enough
ground,
FE
That's a little-
thereby
Mishka.
creating artificial gravity, something
Yeah,
we
right,
discussed
right. Gotta
in our
put my
previous
signature on
video
it.
in much more depth. And so life
So I
on
was
board
able to
would be
give that to
relatively
him
pleasant,
yesterday,
working,
and I
living
saw that
much
he
like we
posted on
do here
Facebook
on
for the
Earth.
first time in a while that
A
he
ship
had
that
a big
undergoes
bright
constant
smile with this thing in
acceleration
place, and he
starts
was
out
very
slow,
excited to
but
see
gains
his kids.
ever
So
more
my first
momentum
thank you
over
is
time as its voyage
just
continues.
for
So this is
you
a bit
being
like
you and doing what you
compound
do, because
interest. Your
personally
gains
I
look
met this
small to
person, I was
begin
able
with,
to help
but over
this
a long
person and
period of
change their
time, those
life
gains
and give them
rapidly
confidence
accumulate.
through your channel.
After
So
just 2.5
thank you for doing what you do,
hours, we
because
would have
it's allowed me
sailed
that
past the
acquaintance.
moon.
Well, thanks
The
so much. That's really
1.5
kind,
days
and
would
I
be
definitely
at
think that's
Mars.
all you.
And after
It's
3
all you,
weeks,
not me.
we'd have
But
undertaken
bringing people
Voyager 2
together,
and
if
left
I can
the
bring
solar
people
system
together, or make people
altogether.
make new
By
friends
this
or
point, our
acquaintances,
ship would be
or
traveling at
just have a good
40
conversation, and I think it has
miles
brought a lot of
per
people
hour, or
together.
about 6%
Just
the speed of
open-mindedness
light.
and
That's far
really
faster
looking at the
than
world in a
any
different way,
spaceship
and that's
we
why I get
built
so upset
has
when I
ever
hear them
traveled
say,
before.
"Oh, flat Earth is
It's
dangerous
fast,
content." There's
but it's
nothing
not
dangerous
fast
about
enough for
what I'm
Einstein's
saying.
theory
It's
of
bringing people
relativity
together,
to
and
really
it's
come into
for
play
good
here.
reasons. And all we
As
talk
we leave
about is being kind to each other, ways to improve your health. You talk about ways to improve your drinking habits, your eating habits, the same thing David and I talk about. It's just sad that they think that that's negative simply because we don't want to buy into their space fantasy.
The next year is fairly uneventful.
Right, exactly. And then on Saturday, randomly while I was at the grocery store, I got a call, and I normally don't pick up random calls, but it was a 916 number, so I was like, yeah, screw it, I'll answer. And it ended up being, I talked to this guy for probably about an hour. He's also a listener of your channel, got my number through your channel because you had done the promo video for the meetup, and he had been waiting to call, didn't know, like he's new into flat Earth, maybe about a year. He lives kind of locally out of Modesto, and
sports
also
results,
a retired veteran,
and political scandals back on Earth.
You know, kind of had all these. He first asked me, "Oh yeah, you know where Jeran lives?"
Journey,
and I'm like, "Oh God, who is this right now?" And I'm not going to tell you where Jeran lives. You know, he wanted to collaborate with you. So, but anyways, got to talk to him for a bit, and he ended up that he's got severe PTSD from serving in serving in the military, and that he's tried many CBD products and all this sort of. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't have a lot of money to spend. So a buddy of mine actually owns, or not owns, sorry, the West Coast, the top West Coast distributor for this CBD and THC company that's highly reputable. Anyways, sent him an entire package today full of those products, a bunch of Flat Earth 101 products that we got from Elaine and David.
That's because you're now traveling away from the Earth at 87%.
So sent him a whole bag, and he's so grateful. So anyways, I met another person, had such a long, great conversation with him, and it's just really funny how
45 days time. But Einstein's
theory, your channel, Glowbuster's channel, I mean, so many, Karen B. Doolin has brought so many great people, and DITRH, it's all these chats, but yours specifically have brought me people that have given me gratitude, that have given me fulfillment.
Now, this is
and I'm just so grateful for that, and I don't ever want you to stop doing what you're doing, and not just being selfish because it helps me, but I can't imagine all the other people that have benefited from what you're doing. So thank you, Jeran. You're awesome.
Then it will
thank you so much, man. You brought a tear to my eyes.
Exactly
I'd love to be
part of that. The speed of light.
No, Jeran, will you be at the conference?
Can never catch up. If the speed of light is a constant for all observers, then the mind-bending consequence is that space and time not
yes, which car? I'll be at Shasta, and I'm working on Dallas. I think I'll be at Dallas. I'm trying to work up a volunteer thing again, but I might also
such that observers back on Earth seem to see the crew moving slower than usual on board, and even space shifts, such that the ship itself appears squashed.
I'll be there.
And both of those
effects so a couple more things. I'll be quick. The fluoride, the guy who was talking in your chat about fluoride, a couple things to understand. I'm a registered dental assistant. I do not advocate for fluoride. But you got to understand there's a difference between natural occurring fluoride and man-made occurring fluoride.
Appears to be getting ever smaller as you approach the speed of light.
It's a crystalline substance that occurs in crystals, so that may be where you're getting, not you, Jeran or Dave, but the homeboy in the chat, where you're getting the excessive amount of fluoride.
Time appears to be running just like usual,
site that does a really good job of breaking it down. Because
looking back at the sun, you'd notice that it would have appeared to have faded into darkness, much faster than you'd expect from simple distance scale. By the time your Lorentz factor is 2, it's now 10,000 times dimmer, only detectable with a ship's onboard telescope, as a result of relativistic aberration and time dilation effects.
And it goes on to talk about different types. So anyways, I think that's where you're getting into confusion is natural crystalline fluorapatite compared to sodium fluoride or calcium fluoride. Those are very different. Those are man-made, and those are very harmful, and you do not want to consume them. That's my piece on that. We can get more into that later.
What people don't realize is, as I was talking about how they just changed the name of drugs, according to the side effect that they make the main effect, the only active ingredient in rat poison and Prozac is sodium, is
constellations ahead of you would appear distorted.
I think it's sodium fluoride to be specific, which is dangerous. It's a byproduct of the aluminum smelting industry and the aluminum phosphate industry, or like something like that.
You have to wear a full hazmat suit to transport it. They had a spill on the highway a couple of years ago, and it burnt through the highway into the ground.
So one way of doing this is to accelerate your ship up to about the halfway mark.
And then my last thing is the whole Trump on space thing. What I found very interesting about his tweets and what you guys some of you may or may not know is that there's a lot of gematria involved, a lot of decodes involved in the tweets that Trump puts out.
Remember that this
along
means
with
that
QAnon, but if people don't follow that, whatever. If you go to Donald Trump's tweets, you take all the capital letters, whether they start a name or start a sentence, you take all the capital letters and you plug them into a gematria or gematria calculator, you can actually come out with some pretty interesting decodes. So that's something y'all can do with that tweet, but something very interesting at the last part of his tweet says they should be focused on the much bigger things we are doing, including Mars, and then in parentheses, of which the moon is a part, defense and science. So I found that interesting that he would, they should be focused on much bigger things that we are doing, including Mars, of which the moon is a part. So I just find that interesting when you actually look at that, look at his tweet, look at that last part and what he's trying to say there. I think that there's some decoding that can be involved along with the gematria capital letter plugin. So
I was thinking about that. That would be about 1. I was thinking about that comment, and of the moon, which is a part, and it's just perfect where it'll just keep everybody arguing. They are focused on the moon. No, they're not focused on the moon. We're just focused on Mars. No, he said the moon's part of it. It'll just have everybody arguing in circles forever.
Momentum to go further, far further than
they do that. Then you've got Bridenstine, who came right back and tried to sum up what Trump said by saying something completely different. So David, you're exactly right. They just keep you keep you guessing and keep you. But I'm talking about the gematria of it, because you're right. He does sometimes put capital letters too in weird spots.
Oh, and there are capital letters there where they do not belong. So it's, there's a lot of good YouTubers that do good decodes on this stuff. One of them is called Serial Brain 2. So I implore everybody to check out that channel. He really does. I mean, I don't even know how he does this stuff. But anyway, that's a great channel to look at those decodes. But I will let you guys go. Thank you for letting me spew my soapbox here.
As the local fluff.
Yeah.
A ship which makes
thank you so much. I really appreciate the call.
This local fluff would age
for sure. You guys have a good night.
All right, talk to you later. During their adventure. Upon return, they'd find that their children.
That's good. She did a good job of that. Let's see here. Let's go to the 905 area code. You're on with Jeranism Monday Night Raw. I had the same sound issues you have today, I guess. Echo.
Oh, I'm still dealing with it, Jeran. Yeah, echo.
Yeah,
Perhaps the crew are not satisfied with just leaving this local fluff, though. Perhaps they vote to go further. The local bubble is a larger volume in which the local, which had transformed society in those 6 centuries gone by. Let's go further and set a round trip to leave our galactic spiral arm, the Orion Spur, for which the round trip would take 31 years for the crew. This is where things get weird. Remember that your journey is characterized by 4 phases, and at the end of that first phase of acceleration, you're hitting your peak velocity. So if you're journeying out to the edge of the Orion Spur, that first phase would take you about 8 years. But after about 6.5 years, you and your crew would look out of the front window and you would see something very strange. 2/3 of the way into your 7th year of travel, a small patch of the sky ahead looks like it's glowing red. At first, you think that your eyes are simply playing tricks on you after so many years in space, but then you realize that your Lorentz factor by now is 650, and the leftover radiation from the Big Bang, the cosmic microwave background, has now blue shifted all the way from the microwave to visible red light. Over the course of your now final year of outbound acceleration, you and your crew are amazed to see this small patch of the sky ahead grow ever brighter, ever bluer, until at its peak velocity, it's like staring down into the eye of a cosmic rainbow, as if the ship has now finally caught the gaze of the universe itself. Perhaps not satisfied with leaving the Orion Spur, you instead choose to journey to the edge of the galaxy itself, a round trip for the crew of 41 years. Having returned home from their 100,000 light-year round trip, the crew, now in their 60s, would return to an Earth which had witnessed 100 millennia pass by. It's very difficult to imagine how humans would have changed after such a long timescale. Perhaps our ancestors would look different after so many generations of gradual evolution. Perhaps they would speak completely different languages to the ones we recognize today. Maybe they would have even abandoned technology and gone back to a more Neolithic way of living. Maybe even the Earth itself is abandoned at this point, and there are no trace of humans on the Earth at all. Whatever happens at this point, the ship's computer database very likely represents an ancient library containing information long lost to the eons of time back on Earth. But all of this is still within our own galaxy. What if we go truly to the beyond, to another galaxy altogether? Let's go to Andromeda. In a 56-year epic round trip, you and your crew return in old age to Earth, having borne witness to another galaxy firsthand. But back on Earth, there is very likely no one even recognizable as human by this point, with 5 million years having passed by. You and your crew are very likely the last humans in the universe. Although there are no humans left, the Earth looks better than you've ever seen it before. Biodiversity has almost recovered to pre-human levels, coral reefs have recovered across the planet, and cities and concrete have disappeared as nature has now reclaimed what was always hers. If we wish to venture further afield than Andromeda, then we may start to need life extension technologies for the crew. Voyaging beyond our cluster of galaxies, the Virgo cluster, would require a round trip of 67 years for the crew. The Virgo cluster lives within the Laniakea supercluster of galaxies, a region of space spanning hundreds of millions of light years and containing tens of thousands of galaxies. Your round trip now would take 76 years. At peak velocity during that journey, your Lorentz factor would be 250 million, a speed of 0.999999998 times the speed of light. By this point, the cosmic microwave background will have appeared to have increased from its ambient 2.73 Kelvin temperature to over 1 billion degrees Kelvin. That's the temperature that the universe was after just a few minutes after the Big Bang itself. Needless to say, this would be an extremely hazardous radiation environment for you and your crew, not to mention the now ludicrous shielding requirements to protect against impacts. Sometimes you hear it said that as you get to relativistic speeds, the momentum of the ship increases so much that that somehow protects it from impacts. But from the perspective of the ship, it is not moving. It is the particles, the space debris out there that has the extreme momentum, and thus collisions with these tiny particles would not be for the faint of heart. After completing your 76-year round trip to the edge of the Laniakea supercluster, your home system would be barely recognizable. Landing on Earth, continents would have shifted into unfamiliar positions. The surface is now devoid of plants or animals, and you can no longer even breathe the air around you. Over the last billion years, the sun's luminosity has now increased by almost 10%, which in turn has increased the rate of weathering on the Earth. That weathering has removed carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, so much so that photosynthesis is now no longer possible, ending the reign of plant-based life, ceasing oxygen production, and collapsing the food chain. By this point, even plate tectonics may have shut off as water evaporates from the Earth's surface. These would be the last days of multicellular life on Earth. Beyond this point, only simple microbial life will be able to cling on to existence for maybe a few 100 million years at best. The living Earth is gasping her last breath. And so I think it would be a mournful return to come back to your home planet and see it not go out with a bang, but be suffocated with a slow, drawn-out, cruel death. perhaps reminding you of the fate which likely awaits yourself, as now even your own body is feeling the effects of time. One might suggest that there's no reason why Laniakea should be the limit to these types of round trips. After all, the time dilation is now so extreme that we can travel exponentially further with each passing year. Indeed, you sometimes hear it claimed that we could even travel to the edge of the observable universe using constant acceleration. Those are galaxies some 46 billion light years away from us. But no matter how much we accelerate, no matter how extreme time dilation becomes, we will never be able to reach the edge of the observable universe. Now, why should this be? Well, when we talk about journeys of billions of light years, then the expansion of the universe itself starts to interfere with our voyage. In 1998, two teams of astronomers used distant supernovae to independently discover that the rate of the universe's expansion, something known since Edwin Hubble's time, was in fact increasing. It was itself accelerating. We do not fully understand why this is happening, but the cause is usually labeled dark energy. Using these measurements of the rate of the universe's expansion, we can define various thresholds, various horizons which limit our interactions with the outside universe. For example, the so-called particle horizon is the greatest distance which a particle of light could have traveled since the Big Bang itself, essentially, which was 13.8 billion years ago. Now, you might naively think that that means that the distance should be 13.8 billion light years, but because of the expansion of the universe, it's actually a much greater distance, ends up being 46 billion light years across. Now, coming back to our spaceship adventure, if I want to make a round trip over cosmic distances, then this expansion causes the distances between regions to gradually grow during my trip, meaning I have to travel further than I thought I did. Now, this isn't important if you're traveling within a gravitationally bound region like a galaxy, say, that resists the expansion. But it is very important as we voyage beyond our galactic supercluster. As far as I can tell, there is no previous mention or calculation of a round-trip horizon in the literature, but we should be able to calculate it by solving the following set of equations. I'll link to a paper down below where you can learn all about how to do these kinds of calculations yourself. But to save you that pain, the resulting proper distance turns out to be 8.3 billion light years away. This distance represents a cosmic point of no return. Once you cross it, there's no coming back. You would never be able to get back home, even traveling at the speed of light. And that's because the expansion of the universe simply outpaces you. And yes, space can and does expand faster than the speed of light. So it would be a strange feeling on board the ship as you cross that threshold, knowing that no matter what happens from this point on, you would never return home and see the Earth again. Since we can't return home beyond this point, let's not even try. Let's change the rules of our trip and make it a one-way ticket. Now, I'm still going to assume that the second half of our journey is a deceleration phase where we come to a stop. And that's simply because it's very difficult to talk about how much time has passed by unless we return to the same inertial frame of reference from which we left. Now, liberated from the need to come back home, you might expect that we can travel far, far further into the universe, perhaps even to the edge of the observable universe. But again, the answer is no. Even if we accelerate forever, we'll never catch up to the so-called event horizon, which lies at twice the point of no return. This represents the greatest distance which a beam of light emitted from Earth now could ever reach in infinite time. Because parts of the universe are expanding at the speed of light, then we can never catch up to such regions and thus end up being limited to distances within this so-called event horizon. But what the hell? I mean, we've come this far, let's just keep going. After this point, we're not really a spaceship anymore because No matter how hard we try, we never catch up with the event horizon. And in fact, the rest of the universe around us expands away in all directions ever faster. Soon, there are no galaxies, no clusters, nothing around us as the universe expands ever faster beyond our view. We've become isolated, trapped in the void. If we're not really a spaceship anymore, perhaps we've become a time ship. Could we use our ship to travel to the end of time itself? Now, certainly if you naively use the equations of special relativity, things certainly do look extreme. For example, with an acceleration and deceleration phase spanning 2 centuries by the ship's clock, a clock back on Earth should have recorded 100,000 trillion years. Enough time that even protons would have theoretically decayed to leave no nucleonic matter left. But here's the thing, it doesn't really make much sense to even talk about time dilation anymore. And that's because time dilation is defined as being relative, hence the name relativity, to our initial inertial frame of reference, which in our case was the Earth. But by this point, after so much time, after crossing so many light years, the Earth lies beyond our cosmic horizon. We are no longer causally connected to it. Put another way, it is now literally impossible to compare clocks to those back on Earth. To make matters worse, not only can you not compare to Earth's clocks, but you can't even compare to any other clock by this point. That's because by now the universe has expanded by a factor of 10 to the 10 to the 55, and statistically, there would very likely be no other particles within your entire universe except for you. Even the cosmic microwave background has thinned out to nothing by now. How can we even talk about measuring time, comparing clocks, when the clocks effectively exist in separate universes by this point? The very definitions underpinning time dilation have effectively unraveled. And so here, finally, your journey comes to a close. In complete isolation, a perfect void. You and your crew have become a monument to times that once were, to a universe that once was. And perhaps as you and your crew finally pass away into the night, you think back to that fateful day that you agreed to step on board this vessel, to be locked into a tomb that hurtled into nothingness. The universe right now is in its youth. We live in its flourishing years, with stars sparkling across the sky, and perhaps life too proliferates across the cosmos. This is its golden era, and we are a product of it. There's never been a better time to be alive, and there probably never will be again. Like all things, the universe must eventually end. But for now, we have a moment in the sun. Summer days to live, grow, and build by. Let us use the time that we have wisely.
It's just his place to hide. He pushed away the pain so hard, disconnected himself from the person he loved the most. Sometimes when you win, you lose.
Temperature is nearly 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. For energy, our sun converts 700 million tons of hydrogen into 695 million tons of helium every second. The sun is part of a solar system formed around 4.5 billion years ago that includes Earth and 7 other orbiting planets from Mercury to Neptune. And it isn't a stationary system. Our solar system is spinning, flying through space at 134 miles per second, turning in circles as part of a vast collection of stars and star systems. There may be 200 billion stars in this collection called the Milky Way galaxy. An estimated 6 billion of those stars with planetary systems like ours. Our solar system orbits the center of the Milky Way on one of its outer arms. The Milky Way is one of more than 125 billion galaxies that make up the visible universe. This is the universe. It's really, really big. And it's getting bigger. It's expanding. If the universe is expanding, then it used to be smaller. Much smaller. In fact, if we went back in time, we could watch it shrink. Back far enough, and the universe would be smaller than a galaxy. Back, and the universe is smaller than our solar system. Farther back, and everything that exists fits inside a stadium, a coffee cup, an atom. 13.7 billion years ago, the universe was smaller than the smallest part of an atom. Unbelievably small. Then, something happened. In a flash, everything suddenly expanded. This was how it all began. The first moment of existence. What we now call the Big Bang.
And that's what we know to be true, not because theorists have invented it, but because all the observations tell us we can predict the abundance of light elements, and they agree over 10 orders of magnitude with what we see. So that fundamental picture that the universe is expanding and emerged out of a hot, dense universe, a finite time in the past, is the Big Bang picture.
The theory of the Big Bang isn't the sort of thing you figure out overnight. It takes years, centuries of collected wisdom. Mankind has been thinking about this for a long time. Even before we realized it, we were thinking about it. Every time we looked up at the stars, we were thinking about it. How do we know what we now know? How did we figure it all out? That's the heart of our story. The story of how our concept of the universe evolved.
We stockpile the discoveries of the most brilliant members of our species, allowing us, however strained and with whatever struggle it involves, to slowly ascend the ladder of knowledge. Maybe compensating for the fact that any one of us is just too stupid to figure it all out.
So, where do we begin? Today, professional astronomers and physicists on campuses like the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Cambridge University in England wage debate about the Big Bang theory. But the conversation began a long time ago, before anyone ever heard of the Big Bang, before anyone knew what the heavens really were.
Way before science existed or was even a contemplation in the minds of anybody, people were asking questions about origin.
When early man looked at the sky, he saw it dominated by the warming, life-giving sun. At night, he saw the moon and stars. This was the universe, harsh, hostile, and chaotic, with a drifting sun that shifted across the sky as the seasons went from warm to cold. Primitive people needed to understand the world in order to survive it.
People had absolutely no control over nature. The balance of the expected and the unexpected, people make nature into gods in order to establish some kind of relationship with them.
Without telescopes or modern observatories, primitive people relied on simple structures to help them understand the skies. At places like Stonehenge in England or Chichen Itza in Mexico, they attempted to connect with the heavens, the perceived home of the gods. These were simple instruments of observation and tools of analysis that helped make sense of the dancing universe.
We are here in the eastern part of Germany, some 100 kilometers south of Berlin, a little village called Goseck. One of the oldest monuments concerning sun, moon, and stars was found here. This is the solar observatory at Goseck. It was built 7,000 years ago and was used by the early farmers to tell the time in the year.
Constructed 2,000 years before Stonehenge and reconstruct here, this is Europe's oldest known calendar. During the winter and summer solstices, the shortest and longest days of the year, the setting sun lines up with gates in the Palisades. Knowing these dates,
and you guys are always, looking for that opportunity, with the force to line and force to level. This thing is supposedly an existing 4-mile level
to calculate when to plant,
above
when to
ground
harvest.
Conduit.
In other words,
it's called a jacketing
upon their
bench.
understanding the motion
Do you know?
of sun.
And I left
a specific name.
This idea
of
astronomy,
I
predicting
did, and I
the
left
behavior
it
of
on
the natural
Dave's
world
speak
based
pipe.
on the motion of the heavens, gets
I
mixed
don't know
up with
what
the
town
dogma
it's
of
in, but
astrology,
I
the
did
belief that the motion
leave
of the
the
heavens
information
determines our fate.
About
the signals military.
the video that I found it in.
All right, well, if you can find
really
it
worth
again,
looking into, I think.
Okay, I'll check it out.
How can I? You guys never answer me. I mean, I try to talk to you guys all the time, and I never get through.
Well,
and I understand you're busy.
Well, we rarely never get to any phone calls on the show. Rarely. We always get through all the phone calls. So this show is every Monday. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific or 9 to 11 Eastern, and you can call in here and you can talk to us. You just did. But we do need the name of it. Again, this is the kind of, I get a lot of emails like this where it's kind of vague, and I don't even know what to begin looking for.
No, I was specific.
So you're saying a 4-mile conduit, a jacketing bench, and somehow you left that on a recent Speak Pipe with Dave?
And learned how the heavens move.
Yeah, it was on his dermatology and IT video. Podcast. Remember that? Dermatology and IT.
I see science.
Okay, I got that. I know that one.
Send the information again, and with some specifics, we'll take a look at it.
So you're saying you're
I have to apologize.
The universe.
No problem, but you're actually.
I've waited to talk to you guys for 3 or 4 years now, and I was out after work, and I am a little.
to the wind.
I'm not speaking my best.
No problem. But you said actually.
It's very important to me.
So David, he's saying that he already left that information on a show you did.
It's gone.
No, why is it?
If you could point out where it is,
I'll send it again.
Our shows and then show me exactly where it is. I'll listen to it.
He said, "Okay, thank you so much for the call." He's saying it was on your IT something IT show.
I don't know what show that is. Go figure that show out, Jeran. Then listen to the whole show, and then find his speak pipe, and then tell me what it says. Okay?
So in other words, the ancients were no fools.
I'll get right on that.
Yeah. As soon as Jeran does that, I'm all over it.
Okay. Let's go to the 904 area code. You're on with Jeranism Monday Night Raw. Who's this?
This is Brian from Jacksonville, Florida.
What's
up, Brian?
And moved haphazardly, or so it
seemed.
Hey,
2 things.
These were planets, and predicting their motion
with Team
became
Jeran.
centuries-long goal.
All right.
And I wanted to say my view on things as far as so the Earth.
The group saw only 5
we live
planets,
in a dynamic system.
naming each after their
And
gods.
from what I understand, I mean, I see where they're coming from with their arguments, but
we're more familiar with
everything,
their Roman designations.
it seems to me everything
Mercury,
is trying to seek
Venus,
equilibrium.
Mars,
Temperature is always
Saturn,
trying to find level.
Jupiter.
Pressure is always
Ancient
trying to find
astronomy
level.
assumed a concept
density,
of the universe,
or, height,
proposed
whatever
by
you want
4th
to call
century
it,
BC
is always
Greek
trying to find
philosopher
level.
Aristotle, who imagined the
If we
Earth
don't lift it,
at the
it
center of
doesn't
the
fall.
universe,
Or if it doesn't grow out of the
with
ground
the sun,
and rot or
moon,
what, then it doesn't
stars,
fall.
and planets,
So it's
all
at its
revolve
equilibrium.
elegantly
So
around
one way to describe
perfect
it would be
crystalline spheres.
like say temperature.
Was finite.
You know,
It was a big
you heat
sphere.
something up.
Actually, it was like onion.
And,
It was an
and you
onion
stop
with many
heating it up,
concentric spheres.
it cools back down. But you have to
First
heat it up
century
before it
astronomer
cools back down. Or pressure, you pump something up.
by accurately
If
tracing
it
the
ain't sealed,
paths of
then
the planets,
then the pressure goes
which
back
didn't
down
move
as soon as you quit
haphazardly
pumping.
after all.
Same thing with you raise something up,
circular
it falls back down.
Epicycles.
Everything is trying to find equilibrium. I don't see why there has to be a downward force because everything doesn't go downward. The dense things go downward, like water. Water comes down with rain, but when it heats up and it loses density, it floats up into the clouds. It's pretty cut and dry. I don't see why they need gravity as a force.
The idea
that neither do I.
You stole my line, Jeran, and neither does Jeran. Neither of you can say.
Ptolemy's system did not accurately.
But he just described it perfectly, and you're saying you can't see. It's so funny.
I totally
everything's looking for equilibrium. And yeah, but I mean,
if everything was looking for its equilibrium, they'd be floating all over the place mixed together.
That is the dumbest statement you've ever said, David. I'm disappointed.
If you don't lift it up,
I've said
hold on a second. Time out, caller. Time out, caller. That was the dumbest. Say what you just said again, David. Were you joking or are you honestly saying
that? If there was no downward force, a bowling ball would hang out next to a feather because it doesn't have anywhere to go.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It seriously pains me that you don't understand what you're saying. It doesn't make any sense. That's not even the argument that Bob has. Bob wouldn't even make that argument.
If there was no downward force, nothing, buoyancy and density have no objective.
What do you mean?
I mean, they have nowhere to go.
Okay, so a bowling ball is sitting next to a feather.
They're not sitting. Sitting is a downward force.
Was at the center
of the
universe.
No, that's called that is the relative density of the two items.
Christian clergy.
No, you're not muted. You can go ahead.
The word of God.
Oh. Yeah, if you don't lift it up, it doesn't fall down. Same thing with temperature. If you don't heat it up, it doesn't cool down. If you don't raise the pressure doesn't come back down. If you don't heat something up, it doesn't cool back down. If you don't lift something up, it doesn't fall back down. It's relative density. Just like,
that doesn't make any sense. If you don't lift something up,
a cathedral
you're saying, but what if it wasn't? What if it was over there, or up there, or in the middle over here? If you don't move it, it doesn't move back.
It doesn't
mean anything.
Copernicus was troubled.
Well, it would have to get down there somehow. If you want something to go down, it has to get down there somehow. It has to know where down is. Imagine you were put into space, no Earth, and I spun you around in the dark. Now you got to fall. Which way are you going to go?
No Earth.
Dave, don't you realize that you just placed you're just giving yourself into the whole heliocentric model, that there's magical space where you
big time.
I'm saying if you took away the Earth, you're in a void.
What do you mean take away the Earth? Why would you ever say that?
You can't take away the Earth. I love y'all. I love all of you, David.
That there is a downward force.
Automatically fell closest to the sun.
No, the force is raising it up. Like an apple falling off a tree, it has to grow up off the ground. That's the force. It grows off the ground. And nothing falls except for something that the force was lifting it up, or water evaporates, and it goes up, and then it gets dense enough, and it joins the dust, and it gets dense enough, it falls back to the earth. Or you lift something up. If you walk outside, everything is at rest.
Copernicus
believe the tons of water that are flooding the Midwest are floating in clouds before they fall?
Where do you think it comes from, Dave?
The heavens didn't
above the clouds. I think it's coming from the waters above.
Stars chasing across the sky.
They're breaking through and coming from.
But I think low pressure allows the water from above to come down. It definitely clouds are involved. But if you think about it, we've got
planes fly above
the water.
Yeah, but planes fly above that weather.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so they're not getting drenched with water.
We don't know where it's coming from, Jeran. That intermedium space.
Born in 1571.
I can't explain where it's coming from, but it's not. The cloud vapor is not the quantity of water. They don't add up.
So here's one thing I need to kind of be clear on, because I think you said something earlier, and I'm like, okay, maybe this is where we're having a disconnect. Is that
a trove of astronomical data?
There is an established, or there is a down. Now, whether the creator put it here,
talking about Earth observations,
right? Sure, but there's no force. There's no need for a force pulling things to the Earth or pushing things to the Earth, because relative density causes things to separate out.
Yeah, we put down this thing 100 times. Things separate out in relative density because there's a force that says, okay, the heavier ones go down farther and heavier, and the lighter ones float up higher.
This is where I think we're getting somewhere. Why does there have to be a force if
there wasn't, the heavy things wouldn't need to go anywhere?
What do you mean? How can
force heavy wouldn't even make sense?
What are you talking about? How could something be sitting in a medium of air and it be heavier than the air and not have somewhere to go?
Heavier means there's a downward force.
Wow. I don't understand how you can understand that there's density of an object, like a bowling ball. It's much more dense than the air. It must go somewhere. Wherever it goes is down. You don't need a force. What I just said. And here's the other thing.
Down is Earth. Earthward.
And for the first
and
time,
that's where the energy goes. There's energy.
Predictions.
Okay. There's something pushing it down.
And then you have not only something
or pulling it, or attracting it, whatever you want to call it.
That thing is relative density. It's
relative density makes no sense without a force.
That makes no sense. Yeah, we're at an impasse because that just makes no sense.
But the good thing about this impasse is you're as hard stuck in your wrong position that I am in my right position, and we can fight this all day long. It's fine.
Yeah, I know I'm right. Well, yeah, that's good for you. And here's the thing that scares me is I saw in the chat earlier, Bob said, well, it does. Bob said something like, I said, I don't know what Paul on the plane's position is, and then Bob typed immediately, Paul on the plane and all FE core agree that there's a downward force. Okay, so right there's a problem.
Just trying to trigger you. Relax.
Hold on. Right there's a problem because that's what's happened to the mainstream science is that they all believe that there's planets, and when you said that, you can no longer take another position. I could easily have proven that there's a downward force, say, oh, now I think there's a downward force. But when you go on record and say, everybody in FE Core and myself and Paul on the plane and David Weiss, and we all say that there's no, then you've
I agree with, you know what, I'm with you there. Consensus is not science.
Right, there's a problem there.
I'm okay with that. Bob, listen, Bob is trying to build up his team. I don't care about the team because I know that I'm right.
But there is, and I'm not trying to build up my team. I'm fine with my belief on my own. I don't need callers to say that they agree with me because until I'm shown proof, and the things that people come with make no sense to me when they say, well, F equals MA. Well, great. I'm glad that we've been told that.
This argument or this discussion is really paining me. So I literally just asked God to send me a sign on what team he's on, because if he doesn't want to give us the answer, at least tell us what team you're on.
Improved on a design in 1609.
Just got a message.
I'm pretty sure you did that. But if it was God, then I'm going to change my position too.
There you go.
Unprecedented.
No, the last subject on that though, David, I just want to see if you're on my side as far as this goes. When people say that because there's an acceleration, there has to be a force. But do you not agree that if something begins to fall, that it will have to fall faster in the second two than it was falling in the second one?
Only if there's a force.
Galileo was treated to
no force.
If I threw a ball,
not throw a ball. Listen to what I'm saying. If you had a golf ball and you wanted to talk about fake places and fake space and fake.
Run out of time.
Hold on. Removing the Earth and all this stuff. I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying if you have a golf ball and you put it in air and it starts to fall, it doesn't need
a force. You're assuming it's starting to fall because of no force. I'm saying there's a force, otherwise it wouldn't fall.
Oh boy, it's different density than the air it's in. It has to go somewhere, Dave.
Proof
false
of a sun's
solar
system.
Is it false?
What are you talking about? Oh,
right.
That's it. I'm taking a step back from my channel. I'm gonna.
Oh, you are. Look at you. Look at you. Stop
that was a joke. That was a very good joke.
This is the greatest thing that's ever happened to Flat Earth. See, we're not like mainstream science where we all just agree.
No, everybody on FE Core agrees.
A much larger.
That's right. Well, then either they're a bunch of geniuses or a bunch of morons. We'll find out one day.
Or they're just like mainstream science.
Or we're all wrong.
Mathematics.
We could be all wrong. All right, 206 area code. You're on with Jeranism Monday Night Raw. You got to be quick. We only have about 4 minutes remaining. Actually, 2.
We got 1 minute remaining.
Oh,
the ancients had seen.
What's up?
Everything that could be possibly seen.
Out of 2014, I got a cool thing for you. I was on the internet the other day, and I just happened to come across a video of some dude never heard of before, probably nobody else drop 2 rocks out a window.
Centuries
you know what
of
that
church
proves?
dogma
Have a good night,
claiming
guys.
Earth was the center of the universe was now plainly wrong.
Did I miss something?
With the Catholic Church still reeling
Thank you, God.
information,
God just gave us all the answer. All right. Anyway, you know what? We'll make sure we ask Crow 777 next week. See what he's got to say about it. I don't know.
But again, do you know what camp he's in?
I have no idea.
Me neither. Perfect.
Yeah. So join us next week. We've got Crow 777. He'll be on the show with Jason Lindgren. It will be an uncensored show. It will not be on YouTube, except for it might be on Ginger Sugar Bush's channel. However, I warn him now. His channel may be gone if he keeps that on. David, it's been fun.
All right.
Well, next week. Thanks, guys. You've been a great crowd as always. We'll see you next week. Till then, peace.
The Bible tells us how to go to heaven, not how the heavens go. Ultimately, Galileo's downfall was not his inability to persuade the church to his way of thinking, but rather his attempt at interpreting Scripture all by himself.
Hi, my name is Ella, and I'm 10 years old. I'm one of the millions of children born to parents suffering from the sheeple virus. Symptoms include the inability to think for oneself, the attention span of a goldfish, and a strong belief in government and the mainstream media. It is estimated that 1 out of every 2 children are being raised by parents infected with the sheeple virus. But there is a cure. For as little as 19 cents per day, you can become a TFR supporter and help children like me get their daily dose of truth. Together, we will make sure every child has protection from deception.
The Russia probe, chopper crash. I'm Ann Cates. Multiple probes into the president are underway on Capitol Hill.
Chairman Gerald Nadler says the House Judiciary Committee has a responsibility to dig into the Mueller report.
Not merely the portions that implicate Russian nationals, as some have suggested, but the entire report, including the volume that lays out some of the president's troubling behavior.
Whether that behavior amounts to obstruction of justice, says Nadler, is up to Congress to decide. Former U.S. Attorney Joyce White Vance tells the panel it's clear to her
if anyone other than a president of the United States committed this conduct, he would be under indictment today for multiple acts of obstruction of justice.
Republicans on the committee maintain the Mueller report was clear that the president did not collude with Russia, nor did he obstruct justice. Linda Kenyon, Washington.
Authorities in New York City say the pilot killed after his helicopter crashed into a Manhattan skyscraper has been identified. Correspondent Shimon Prokopech.
What was this helicopter doing over Times Square? Did the pilot just lose control and was looking for a safe place to land? Because officials have described this as a hard landing, sort of a